What's up YouTube, Webberz05 here coming at you today with Q&A number 30. So today's questions are once again brought to me by my good friend Darkretition84. Thank you very much my friend. Once again some very interesting questions. So without further ado, let's get straight into it. So first question from Darkretition84. These first two are about all four of your decks. Now that you have Draco Slayers again, which deck in these matchups do you think would win? Draco Slayer versus Endymion, Draco Slayer versus Odd Eyes, Draco Slayer versus Plunder Patrol. So against Endymion, I would probably have to put money against Endymion winning, simply because I think Endymion's much more versatile in going first and second. Going first, with how I've currently built it, it would probably set up Draco Slayers in a position it won't be able to play at all. Going second, the best Draco Slayers can essentially do going first is set up maybe a couple, 2 to 3 negates under an Appaloosa, Harbinger, and Draco Future, which, depending on how much resources you get, you can't always do all. They usually get a maximum of about 2, so that's not exactly difficult for Endymion to play through. So I'd have to give that one to Endymion quite easily. Draco Slayer versus Odd Eyes. I've kind of converted my Odd Eyes into the newer variant of Master of Pendulum, which is essentially a combination of Odd Eyes and Endymion. But even as pure Odd Eyes, I'd probably have to give the advantage to, again, Odd Eyes over Draco Slayer, simply because Odd Eyes inherently has strong main deck monsters, and much easier ability of accessing its extra deck. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with Draco Slayers, but their effects are more oppressive to the opponents, so they work better going second as opposed to going first. If they're going first, they're essentially going into their good extra deck resources only to use them as materials for like control options. So then after that, they don't really have as much to go off of, whereas a deck like Odd Eyes or Endymion is very good in the long game. And Draco Slayer versus Plunder Patrol, that's probably interesting. I'd kind of have to probably just debate that and say that's kind of just up to the dice roll, because if Plunder Patrol goes first, naturally they're not going to be able to they're not going to be able to take advantage of attributes that the opponent's playing, so they'll just have to set up a basic board that's ready to tag out into stuff. And essentially, if Draco Slayer knows that they're against Plunder Patrol, all they have to do is try and, because they've got things like Majesty Pegasus and Magister Paladin in the extra deck, they could just very easily try and just keep on wind attribute monsters, or also water as well, since the only water they can go into is just another Blackbeard, and Blackbeard can only tag out once per turn. So essentially, by going second against Plunder Patrol, Draco Slayer has the advantage. They can just it can essentially just go like choose the attributes that Plunder Patrol can't take advantage of and just try and control the game from there. But naturally, if Plunder Patrol was to go second, it can try and take advantage of attributes that are already there, or it can set up or it can just hard Xyz summon the Mogul, hard Synchro summon the Bran to start banishing out resources and just control from there. But yeah, that's essentially up to the die roll fate. But frankly, that could be quite an interesting match to see. 2. If all 4 of your decks faced off in a battle royal, which deck do you think would win? I know I already asked this and you said Endymion, but that was before Draco Slayers came back. I'd still probably have to say Endymion, simply because Mighty Master's Pendulum effect gives it a tremendous advantage in battle royals of the ability to just nuke out the opponent's board, any opposing board, with ease. So yeah, probably pretty easy with that. And additionally, with the additional spellbooks I've thrown into the deck now, it is so much more easy for the deck to clear out multiple disruptions on an opposing board. So yeah, probably Endymion would still reign supreme in that situation. Question 3. Although I've retired from tournaments, suppose I did come back to tournaments regardless of whether it's permanent or temporary. I feel like the only things mainly putting me off playing them is Endymion, no offense to you of course. I completely understand, my friend. You do have your issues with the deck. It is, for someone like you, the playstyle of it isn't particularly fun. So I completely respect your decision. That being said, and also naturally, you understand I completely dislike your Rainbow Neos just for Rainbow Neos' abilities. So we're kind of even on that one. But I understand. But keep in mind with the amount of numbers that we typically have at a tournament, you're exceptionally highly unlikely that you'd actually have to go up against Endymion. But continuing on. Flounder despite losing the wind barrier statue, Kashtira and anything that runs Bestials. I would say Sprite, but I don't know how much losing Elf hurt them. What would your advice be on how to counter them? So, I'll go through these in order. Naturally, not going to tell you the easy methods how to beating out my deck, but as most people know with the Pendulum deck, it's pretty easy. Stop there, like take out the back row, heavy board clearance, easy way to get rid of that. Flunderies, even without the wind barrier statue, they're still a bit somewhat difficult to deal with. Because if your deck relies on a normal summon to work, like for example with you and your Dark Magician, I know you rely on your normal summon of things like Magician's Rod. I mean, that's probably the main one, but I know you do rely on that quite easily. So, if you normal summon against Flunderies and they've got their field spell, naturally you're just allowing them the position to just go off and being able to normal summon completely on your turn. And also naturally they've got their traps as well, which will give them the effect to normal summon on yours. And basically, even without the wind barriers, and as you said, even without the wind barriers, actually, they are pretty good, because essentially the main thing of what they would do now is just summon Riser on your turn and stack parts of your field back onto the top of your deck. So, frankly, I feel most people have found that the best way of dealing with Flu is, again, kind of similar to Endymion, of what I said, board clearance. That's typically my strategy of dealing with Flunderies. So like, if I know I'm going second against Flu, I would side heavy removal, things like probably Raigeki, any back removal I'm playing. I think I've got Feather Duster in my side at the moment. But yeah, definitely things like that. But if you're going first against Flunderies, good options, probably for your deck, would be things like, I find Secret Village of the Spellcasters going first against Flunderies is really good, because it means they can't activate Map to switch out their hand, they can't do Unexplored Winds, which lets them tribute using your stuff by sending it, essentially removing options without too much difficulty. And naturally you can also do other things as well, like if you don't feel like doing Secret Village, you can always, I don't know, play Zombie. You could do Zombie World, which just which would prevent them from summoning the high level ones anyway. But yeah, there's lots of options, so essentially the easiest way of beating out Flu is just board clearance, primarily. As for Kashtira, so I think we've only really got one Kashtira player at locals, and from my experience in that, going second against Kashtira is extremely difficult, particularly if Kashtira knows what they're up against. So in the last tournament, I did have a match against Kashtira. I lost the die rolls, so they went first. He knew exactly what I was playing, so essentially what he did, set up his board of Shangri-La, Mind Hacker, and a Rise Heart. Like, a Rise Heart alone is really difficult for Endymion to deal with, because a Rise Heart is a walking macrocosmos, so anything I play gets banished, which subsequently triggers their own effects. So he set his board up as that. I don't think he actually got... I think he was able to get off... I don't think he banished any of my zones until my turn. So because in standby phase, naturally, Shangri-La has the effect to summon out another Kashtira from the deck, so we'll just do Fenrir. So when I was in that when I was in that situation, I had to play my cards very carefully because I know I'm under the position of like, if I play something, something's gonna get. He's got the option to banish something, and then after he banishes, he starts locking my zones. And so game one, I did try to use an effect out on it, but because my thing's banished straight away, that triggers Mind Hacker. And then he can banish more of my stuff face down, which then triggers off the Shangri-La to block off one of my zones. Essentially, game one, he locked out my pendulum zones. I had no way to play, so I just scooped and went to game two. So game two, I decided to go first. I was able to go just completely full combo with going Secret Village, Spellbook of Judgment. Had a couple of disruption. So I set up a board of Secret Village, Selene, Jackal King, Mighty Master, Jalgun, with a Reflection Engrave for the normal summons. So, and from there, basically, he knew he can't play spells, he can't special summon. If he attempts a normal summon to try and hit over the Jalgun, if he attempts a normal summon to hit over the board, he just knows he knows I can also just go. Main phase 2, effect, remove 3, bring Jalgun back. And then he's just stuck in the same position, so he just skipped and went to game 3. Then game 3, I was in a very difficult position again, because I went second, and he locked out about 3. And so he was able to lock out both of my pendulum zones. I had to try and play through it. Wasn't going particularly well, but essentially I had to rely very heavily on my draws using Spellbook of Knowledge. I was very, very fortunate. I drew into Kurakara Div Incarnate, which allows me to which for those who don't know lets you tribute off which has to be special summoned by tributing off monsters the opponent controls that have activated their effects that turn. So I was able to get rid of the Shangri-La because naturally it inherently chooses to activate its effect in the standby phase to summon another Kashtira, and because I was able to trigger off them. And because I forced him out to banish something, triggered the Mind Hacker, tributed 2 of those off, so summoned it with an extra 3k buff, smacked over something, and it was really close to sign, so I just won the game So I pretty much just won the game from there, but additionally, after I'd taken out all of that main phase 2, I was able to go into the Judgment combo and just end on Jalgun as well, which was great. But yeah, essentially in essence, most people know the easiest way of dealing with Kashtira is you need to do options that essentially remove stuff from the field. So you could do, again, so things like, however, the issue with Kashtira is Shangri-La's effect continues even after its effects get negated. Will continue even if its effects are negated, just while it's face up on the field. So dealing with that, you need tributors. So things like Kaijus or Lava Golems, Sphere Mode. So that's just to get rid of issues like that, to free up your zones. And what was I going with this? So yeah, basically board clearance is one of the ways to go. People also naturally, some people have been main side decking Book of Eclipse, which books the entire field, but naturally Kashtira are expecting that, which is why they play Ash Blossom just to negate the Book of Eclipse. But yeah, essentially the best options I find dealing with Kashtira, gotta find a way to just clear out their monsters with ease. And you said another one of your issues you said was Bestials. There's never really an easy way of dealing with Bestials. The only easy way I find of dealing with Bestials is be extremely careful of what you're putting in your graveyard. So for a deck like Dark Magician, you are severely going to struggle. But naturally with Dark Magician, but the easy options of countering that are just using effects that would prevent banishing from the grave. So that's things like Necro Valley, Lancia, Chaos Hunter. However, I do know that your decks kind of need to be able to move stuff in the grave, so that kind of moves the issue, makes it a bit more difficult. So essentially the easiest thing you can do is just be really careful of what you're putting in your graveyard. But frankly, Bestials are just one of the biggest problems in the game right now. And in regards to what you said with Sprite, yes, losing Elf does hurt a lot of what they can do. However, the deck can still play quite easily. Essentially, removing Elf just basically means they can only do Toad twice as opposed to 3 times, and naturally removes a lot to their consistency of what they do going first. However, going second, Sprite can still make a very big, gigantic Sprite using they can just go full out, spamming level 2s to go into like a big, gigantic Sprite, Cat Shark to make it even bigger, or the Shadow Mosquito to just basically force you to lose out all of your life points. But most people know that with Sprite, one of the easiest ways of dealing with them is a deck devastation virus. True with that. Sprites have exceedingly low stats. You deck dev them. That basically removes all the reward sources straight away. The only issue with deck devastation viruses is if they've got the Nimble engine in their hand, you're going to trigger it off, which is kind of risky. And if they can get the Nimble off, then they've got 2 level 2s on the field, and from there they can just go off. The other issue naturally I find with Sprite is Sprite Sprint, which on summon lets you mill a level 2 monster. So going into time, basically the easy thing of what they do is just mill Volcanic Scattershot, which hits you for 500, and if it's so close to time, you're just going to lose the game from there. But yeah, overall, it's your own. Like you said, it's your own decision of if you want to go back to tournaments. But I think so. It's hard to say what the format's going to shift out like, but who knows? We'll figure. Question 4. Who is your favourite character from Friends? So I had to have a bit of thinking about this. I do like different characters for different reasons. I'd probably have to say Phoebe, simply because in my opinion, Phoebe's basically like the Johnny Lawrence of Friends. She's funny, and she's a badass when she has to be. Who doesn't love a bit of that? Question 5. Which tournament from any Yu-Gi-Oh anime would you have liked to play in? From the anime. I did quite like the World Racing Grand Prix from 5Ds, where it's essentially a team dueling tournament, which I think a team dueling tournament could be quite interesting to have, just naturally because it's 3 people versus, since it's like 3-on-3 as 3 individual games in the form of an endurance. That's going to take a while, so it would naturally take a long time for the tournament to go through, but still looks like still the idea of it could be very interesting. But probably I'd want it just done as usual with a table as opposed to being on a motorcycle, because I value my own safety. Question 6. If you could duel any of the bigger Yu-Gi tubers, which one would it be? I actually have dueled against one of the I've actually had a duel against Simo on Dueling Book when he was doing a thing of like challenging anyone that just clicks straight into his match right away. So I was watching from the feed, watching on there, I'm like waiting for it, go, and I actually did get a match in against him. I basically shut him out with Pendulum Magicians and won the game very easily, which was great. I mean, great that I won, but the match itself wasn't very interesting, but still, something I want to do. But if I had to choose, though I will say, if I also had a chance to duel someone like in person, I probably wouldn't mind going against Truth Gaming just to see how well his Pendulum does against mine. Probably not as well, but who knows? And question 7. I just remembered that you used to play Tenyi. Have you thought about bringing that deck back? No, I have not. This is just on the simple reason because of how Tenyi as a deck plays. Like, there's only like a couple of actually really good Tenyis with the effects of Banish to do something. It's like a Shuna to get another special summon, Adara to bring them back from the Banished, and Vishuda to spot removal, but the others don't really do so much. They're all kind of based around non-effect monsters, and from what Tenyi kind of is doing now, merging with Sword Soul, which is quite strong, gives them a lot of good options, but I don't know. But the thing is with that variant, it's more of a synchro variant, and frankly, I really don't seem to be that into synchro-based decks. Not really sure why, I just haven't kind of gone off synchro for a while. But still. I probably won't be bringing tennies back. Additionally, I don't have my tennies anymore. I got rid of them quite a while ago. And on that note, that's all the questions I have today. So thank you once again, thank you once again, Dr. Patrician. Very amusing questions as always. And for anyone else who has any questions from me, I do these Q&As every Wednesday afternoon UK time, or morning, depending on what my schedule's like. Thank you so much for watching, guys, and I will see you next time.